I see you done made it back to class. Boy, I'm starting to like you. You tuned in on a good day, too. See, we've been covering this thing called freedom, breaking it down letter by letter. The F was Fannie Lou Hamer. The R was redlining. The E, that was for Ella Jane Fitzgerald. What's this other E? Oh, we're going to talk about it today. But before we do, you know how we got to start the video. Fuck Black History Month. Black History is every day, not just 1 month. All right, class. I'm glad y'all keep tuning in for these videos. Today we got us a good one. It's a long one, so strap in. Let's get ready to learn. All right, we told you, Fannie Lou Hamer, redlining, Ella Jane Fitzgerald. What's this other E stand for? Glad you asked. Nah, sit back and let me tell you. E for the Emancipation Proclamation. Oh yeah, we getting into the big dog stuff now. Listen to it. The Emancipation Proclamation was a presidential decree issued by Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863. Remember that date. That declared enslaved people in the rebellious states to be free. The proclamation was a key moment in the American Civil War and the beginning of the process of ending slavery in the United States. What did it do? It freed more than 3.5 million enslaved African Americans in states rebelling against the Union. Remember the Union? North, Confederate, South, Union, Confederate, war against each other, American Civil War, Abe Lincoln, president. Yeah. During all that time, he say, hey, them slaves is free. Yeah, that's what all that is. All right, cool. You're keeping up. See, again, it freed more than 3.5 million enslaved African Americans, and it allowed black men to serve in the Union military. Now, ain't that convenient? Hey, we're at war with the South, and they got all them farmers and all them other folks down there, and I'm going to free these people, and conveniently, I'm going to start letting y'all join the army. Coincidence? I think not. But that's another video for another day. It strengthened the Union's military and political position and inspired millions of Americans. And frankly, it changed the nature of the war. Gave the Union cause moral force. Duh. Who did it exempt? That's right, some parts were exempt from the Emancipation Proclamation. Tennessee and parts of Virginia and Louisiana that were already occupied by the Union. Maryland, Delaware, Kentucky, and Missouri. All areas already occupied by the Union. You see, the Union could not enforce the Emancipation Proclamation in areas that they didn't control. Simple. What was the impact? It inspired other nations like Britain and France to oppose the Confederacy. And it led to the 13th Amendment, which made slavery unconstitutional. You know the 13th Amendment. There's been movies about it. There's been speeches about it. There's everything out there. Go do your research. Matter of fact, come back to this page on another day. We'll do a video about it. Around 25,000 to 75,000 were immediately emancipated in those regions of the Confederacy, where the U.S. Army was already in place. It cannot be enforced in the areas still in rebellion. That's what I just said. But as the Union Army took control of Confederate regions, the proclamation provided the legal framework for the liberation of more than 3.5 million enslaved people in those regions by the end of the war. Some of you may already know June 19th, 1865, especially if you're here in Texas, you know that date well. As a result of the Emancipation Proclamation. 2 years later, Union soldiers reached Galveston, let Texas slaves know, hey, y'all free. They finally got to that point because the Union had finally expanded and was winning the war. There you go. So the national holiday that you all now have of Juneteenth, it's because of here, Texas. It's because of this right here, the Emancipation Proclamation. Emancipation Proclamation outraged white Southerners and their sympathizers who saw it as the beginning of a race war. It energized abolitionists and undermined those Europeans who wanted to intervene to help the Confederacy. The proclamation lifted the spirits of African Americans, both free and enslaved. It encouraged many to escape from slavery and flee toward the Union lines, where many joined the Union Army. The Emancipation Proclamation became a historic document because it would redefine the Civil War from a struggle slowly to preserve the Union to one also focused on ending slavery and set a decisive course for how the nation would be reshaped after historic conflict. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made many references to the Emancipation Proclamation during the Civil Rights Movement. These included an Emancipation Proclamation centennial address he gave in New York City on September 12, 1962, in which he placed the proclamation alongside the Declaration of Independence as an imperishable contribution to civilization and added, all tyrants, past, present, and future, are powerless to bury the truths in these declarations. He lamented that despite a history where the United States proudly professed the basic principles inherent in both documents, it sadly practiced the antithesis of these principles. He concluded there is but one way to commemorate the Emancipation Proclamation. That is to make his declarations of freedom real, to reach back to the origins of our nation when our message of equality electrified an unfree world, and reaffirmed democracy by deeds as bold and daring as the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. Dr. King said that, so you know it's on true. King's most famous invocation of the Emancipation Proclamation was in the speech from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial at the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, often referred to as the I Have a Dream speech. King began the speech saying, 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, we must face the tragic fact that the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. Go listen to the I Have a Dream speech. He said that. Who would have thought over 60 years later, we'd still be fighting to free ourselves from those chains? 60 years after Dr. King made that speech, we're still fighting for those same freedoms, that same equality. We're still fighting to see the real freedom of the Emancipation Proclamation issued by Abe Lincoln. during the Civil War. It's time for a change, y'all. The revolution will be live streamed, and the people will be heard.